So in 99, around in there, when Tertz and I are exploring the land, we found this, and we found out that a lot of Israelis didn't know about this and didn't come here. It's a Maritime Museum. It's very, very special. Has a lot of history to it. There was no roof on it when we first found it. That means that whole top floor, which today the National Historical Society is restoring, there was, because of how they make the building, there was a roof. It was the floor of that second floor, right? Which we would call in Israel the first floor, because this is the ground floor. So it's always a little bit confusing. So it was open to the elements and stuff, and then they began over a period of time to restore it. The building itself, we have our friend, Mr. Guess Who, involved to build a big building like this? Rothschild. Okay, and we have a winery in Zikron. This is close enough that we could have sand, we can make some bottles, let's have a bottle factory. Let's hire a chemist and a guy that knows a lot and is good with people. Dizendorf, he's a famous guy before the establishment of the State of Israel. And if you're in Tel Aviv or other places, you'll see roads named after him and everything. So they went to work, made a bunch of bottles, and the bottles had a lot of, they weren't clear, okay? And they didn't know why. And then they started importing sand from somewhere else in the Mediterranean or from France or somewhere. Now they had clear bottles, but it was so expensive, it was too expensive for the winery to buy them. All they had to do is go over the hill and get some sand, and it would have been appropriate and they would have made good bottles. Why? What was the problem with their sand here on this beach? It looks like a regular sand. It came out of the Nile River. Okay, so we're at the basin, right? The basin of the Mediterranean, and that's Egypt. And as the Nile would dump into the Mediterranean, the currents would bring it over here. Well, what's in the Nile River? If you go all the way up the river, you've got basalt, you've got all kinds of stuff that is being deposited in that river, so it's flowing out, it's coming in here, it's mixed in the sand, you're not getting a pure glass. So once they abandoned the project after really trying, it sat there forever and ever. But there was this little kibbutz around it trying to make it happen, and there was the ancient harbor out there. And then the story gets really interesting because some divers started finding stuff, treasures, like unbelievable treasures, 4,000 years of treasures, almost unprecedented anywhere on the planet. And here it's tucked away in Nasholim, this little sleepy kibbutz. That gives you a couple of the details. Now you start seeing what were on some of these wrecks, and it starts to patch together almost the record of mankind sitting in here in some of the artifacts. There are little idols. I don't like idols. I don't like idols that are represented. It's just stone and wood, but I don't like that stuff. But it's in here. And the sailors, let's walk and talk. The sailors on these ships, they would take a local god along with them for safety, right? And then they get to the port, there's a new god there. They throw the old god overboard and take on the god of the Canaanites. So sometimes in a crowd inside, you lose a lot of those things. We could answer a lot of questions later, but right now it's just, you'll see anchors, you see all kinds of things. These are anchors here. They didn't pull them back up, they just cut the rope and left those big rocks at the bottom of the sea. So you see these big holes in here. So let's go on in and get orientated.
Shalom, welcome.
Shalom.
My name is Bracha. I'm an archaeologist, and I work here as a curator of the museum. And I will be glad to show you the highlights of this museum. We will not be able to see everything because we have here hundreds of finds that we show to the public. You will be able to take pictures, but please, can you do it in the end? So, because the flashlight.
So we'll save our picture taking until we're on our own.
So no flashes.
Yes, you'll be able to walk around later on and everything, to take pictures of everything.
So hold it
So
up.
just in the entrance, before talking about the building in another room, I want to tell you that this is a museum basically of archaeology. We are digging in the tail on the beach. It's a big mound. This is why I hold this stick. This is the mound. Here we are. This is the building. It's a very old aerial photo, but you can see very clear the situation of the coast here. This is the tail that we are digging since 1980 for about 30 seasons. Every summer in July, in the beginning of August, a big expedition. The head of the expedition is from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Now also Haifa University and many other universities around the world and a lot of volunteers. We have every year about 100 students, sometimes more. Depends on the situation in Israel and in the world, how big is the expedition. But it's very scientific, okay? This is why we dig very slowly and we publish everything scientifically and for popular sites that you can read about. What we also do since 1980 is digging in the sea. And in this summer, we had something special that there was a group digging here in the sea, one on the coast and one here. So we had like a trench in the sea and on the tail, trying to combine everything together, okay? Why this is important? Because it used to be a main harbor in Israel since very early periods until about 10 BC, when Herod the Great built Caesarea. It took many years, but they finished it at 10 BC, and then the main port, the main harbor of this part of the country moved to Caesarea, and though little by little deteriorated. The same situation happened in modern time. When Haifa was built, Akko, little by little deteriorated. Or when they built Tel Aviv harbor, Jaffa just little by little disappeared from the map of the main harbors of the Mediterranean. Now, why it happened that in early times the harbor was here, the entrance was from here? Why it happened? This is because of geomorphological situation. We have along the coast of Israel 4 sandstone ridges. Okay, they are very old coastlines. It goes from the north to the south. The western one is here. Okay, you see it along the beach, and here when it reaches Tel Dor, it turns to into the sea. And this is a natural wave breaker, okay? Now, usually in very nice days like today, the sailors knew that they have to enter from here. There was not so much sand like today, so they could reach, this is what we found out now when we dig in the sea, that they could reach this place here, where they had the dock, and we can find huge stones with holes that they tied the boat to. Now, sometimes the sailors were in panic in very stormy days, and they made a mistake. They cut from here. Okay, you see between the islands. They didn't realize that they had stones underneath, and their boats break, and they turn to here, and this is where we find many, many wrecks. We have about 30 now that we trace them and we explore them. We don't take anything from the water, we keep them in the water. Okay? When we were very young, and we were very enthusiastic, everything that we found, we wrote. And we don't have place in the museum, and we don't have money and methods to keep them. Okay? Like if you take a boat out or wreck out, you have wood, you have organic materials that you have to take care of it, and almost impossible. So it's better for the future, for the next archaeologists, to keep them in the water covered with sandbags, waiting for next. Now, what we do, we take samples from everything, every organic piece, and we explore it, and we check it, and we know from which wood, we date it, we know what they ate, because when it's in the sea, like when we have a wreck in the sea, and we find a lot of jars, they are full of honey and cheese and olives sometimes, and a lot of fruit, figs, and sometimes we find the small insects that you find like in rice, and you know, the small ones you don't like when you store it for a long time. We find it stick inside to the walls of the jar, and we know what they ate, and we know we can date them. Anyhow, as I said, when we were very young, we used to take a lot of things out from the water, like the anchors that you see here and outside. So if you move a little bit to this side, everyone will be able to see the anchors here. You see the very old ones? Those of the Canaanite period sometimes are 3,500 years old. You can see here, this is 32 years old, 3,200 years old. They are very heavy, sometimes 200 kilos. And it took time, sometimes hundreds of years, that they found a solution not to carry such a big weight. This is why they added two holes in the bottom, and they stick wood to it. Sorry, I don't want you to. And they stick wood to it, and in this way they could easily lower the weight of stone that they needed, because the wood would stick to the ground, to the bottom of the sea. And later on, they start to make anchors made of wood, like in the other corner, but they add lead weight, or they add stone weights to it. Now, when it's lead, casted lead, they could add ornamentation, like dolphins, like bones that they used to play while sailing. And only 2,000 years ago, they started to make, in Roman times, they started to make iron anchors.
Wow.
We find also sounding weights made of lead, which help them in navigating, help them to understand the depth of the sea, because they tied every like 1 meter. They used to make a tie. They tied a knot, and they could check in this way the depth of the water, and also the character of the bottom, with sand or rock. It's very important also for if they wanted to fish. So they add to the bottom, which was always concave, a piece of fat. Okay, they tied fat to it. It's very, very heavy. If you don't believe me, later on, come to my office. I'll give you to feel how heavy lead is. Now, we have also a scarab that was found, which is 3,700 years ago. We didn't dig so deep. Even after 35 seasons, after 30 seasons, we didn't reach this layer so early. 3,700 years ago, the Canaanite period. It's very interesting that somebody a visitor walked on the tail. He's a photographer. He came to take photos of the birds that now immigrating here. And he found this scarab with the gold ring. And he brought it here, so we want people to pay attention to how excellent citizenship because he understood that maybe he will enjoy it, but other people will not. And other people will not learn about it. A lot of children see. And this is the connection between Egypt and Israel in most of the period when there was any connection or rule. The country was ruled in the Canaanite period by a lot of times by Egyptian monarchy. And somebody very, very high in the hierarchy of Egypt was here. He lost his ring, he lost his stamp. He was vice pharaoh, and he was the one who is in charge of the treasures, and he could stamp. He was the stamp bearer of the king, very high. Maybe like in the Bible, we're talking about Jacob, Joseph in Egypt. He was very high in the order. So he lost his ring. Why the shape of beetle? Because they believed that there is a beetle that pushed the sun, like on the ground. Sometimes you see the beetles that push a round mud bowl like with all the food inside that they have, and they believe that, like on Earth, there is somebody in the sea that push the sun every morning and push it in the evening to the west. And the big miracles that it happens every day. It happens every day. So this is the secret of existence. And this is why they chose the beginning. And here we have a piece of mosaic floor that we'll talk about it later on, okay? About this mosaic floor. Let's go inside. So we'll see the relationship between this building and the Zichron Yaakov. As you all understand, the people of Zichron Yaakov, the first Jewish Aliyah, the modern Jewish Aliyah, started in 1882. And in the beginning, there were 7 towns. One of them is Zichron Yaakov on the hill. And after suffering and not knowing how to live there, Baron Rothschild became involved in supporting them by sending some money, but this was not the main idea, his main idea. He wanted to help by sending experts, agronomers, people to show them plants, to show them what to grow here, how to adapt it to the conditions here in this country, which were very, very difficult in those days. Remember that the empire that ruled this area were the Ottomans, the Turkish Empire. So he wanted to help, and he came to visit. 5 times he came to visit. In the first time he came from the bay that maybe you saw it before. You came from the beach.
Oh, we're going there next.
Oh, okay. So when you see the nice
beach.
The nice one, the one that belongs to the kibbutz, he came through there with his yacht, and he saw the sand around, and he said, like everywhere used the glass, like the Phoenicians in the past, that used the sand to make glass. This is what we'll do. We'll build here a glass factory for making bottles for the winery that he planned to build in Zichron Yaakov. There was already one in Rishon LeZion, near Jaffa, Tel Aviv, that already started to work. So he said, we'll make in this country a lot of wine, millions of liters of wine, and we'll send it to all the Jewish communities around the world. Jews are, especially wine, they want to make it kosher. And this is what we'll make. Instead of that everyone will make his own wine from raisins, and it will be only sweet, we'll do like in France, good wine. And in order to keep it well, it needs bottles. So this was the idea. He came back to France. He met a young engineer. His name was Meir Dizengoff. Later on, he became the mayor of Tel Aviv, the mythological mayor of Tel Aviv. But we're talking before Tel Aviv was built. Tel Aviv was built in 1909, and we're talking about 1891. Okay? So, this Dizengoff, this young engineer, came here from France. He checked the country. He went to the Dead Sea to check the minerals, to the Negev, where today we make bottles in the Negev, from the sand of the Negev, which is better. He checked there, and he came with the conclusion that the best will be to build here a factory. And this is where we are. We are in the factory that produced a lot of bottles in the beginning. And according to Baron Rothschild concept, there was not just a factory. It was a community, because the workers need a place to stay, and also the experts that were sent from France to teach them how to make the glass, they had a place to stay. And he had lands here. He bought a lot of lands. Now, there was a big village not far from here, where today some of the buildings of the hotel are. There was an Arabic village called Tantura, and some of the people of Tantura worked here also. So they started to make these bottles, and very soon, after 2.5 years, the factory was closed. A lot of problems that nobody saw them before caused them to close everything, to sell everything. All the roof tiles that covered the building came from Marseille in France. So it was they had a big demand for this in Zichron Yaakov. So all the roof tiles are probably in Zichron Yaakov now. The big machine, motor, that was bought from France now is in another site near Hadera. They used to blow air to the furnaces. There were 2 furnaces. I'll show you in a second where it was. So everything was very modern, like in France. And this was the vision of Baron Rothschild. But what they found out that the sand is not good enough. They had to bring a lot of raw materials, minerals from France, Belgium. They had to bring coal because the Turks didn't let them use the wood of the hills, of the Carmel Mountains here. And the biggest problem was malaria. Because where today you see very nice fish ponds, these were swampy area. And it caused a lot of disease like malaria. And only Europeans that came to work here got malaria. 1 of each family got malaria. And a lot of people died. And in the end, the one who recommended to close the factory was the doctor, Hillel Yaffe, his name. People of this area know him very well because this is our main hospital, Hillel Yaffe. So even today we remember him because he's the one who tried to find solutions for the malaria problem. We finally, in 1895, only the skeleton of this building remained. There were 2 other buildings. You can see the only photograph we have where the workers work and where the laboratories were. So just this building survived. How? We don't know. It's a miracle. Because these stones, the sandstone is it's a nice stone, very nice cut, and the people use them later on. So we don't know why this survived, but in 1980, when we started to dig in the sea and in the land on Tel Dor, the people of the kibbutz said, why don't you use the building instead of building a tent? Use it. So we started to bring everything from the Tel, all the finds from the sea and the Tel. We had workshops here, and little by little it became a museum. So nobody decided or planned it in advance. It's a natural process that happened here, and this is what you see. You don't see a museum that was designed and, it's our work, okay? It's non-profitable society, and our idea is to keep the building. It doesn't belong to the kibbutz, not to the government. It's society that protect the building and all the finds. We protect the finds from not be taken to Jerusalem or to other museums because we want to show, first of all, the volunteers that come. Some of them come every year. It's unbelievable. I see people and they see me getting old every year because they come every summer. Instead of going to the Riviera in France, they come to here to work very hard because we wake up at 4 o'clock. We start to dig at 5:30, depends on the sunrise. And we work, it's hot in July until 1 o'clock. And then we rest a little, take shower, and we work again in the afternoon, sorting, reading, explaining, and this is what we do. Now, from the building, nothing remains. You can see here some pieces of glass and some bottles. Some of them were not sure that they are originally from here, but people from Zichron Yaakov came and say, my grandmother told me that this bottle is from the factory of Baron Rothschild, so we keep them, but we're not sure. But this is the story of the building, okay? So now we're going, do you have any questions, by the way? This is Baron Rothschild, this is photographer, the photograph, the only one, how we come through the bay that you'll see later on. We have stories of all the members who work here. By the way, we found a very interesting letter that Dizengoff, the manager of the factory, wrote to Baron Rothschild in France, and he said we must close the factory, not only because of the malaria, but you have to understand the situation of the workers here. The Muslims that work here don't work on Friday. The Jews don't work on Saturday. Friday noontime, they stop everything, prepare themselves for Shabbat. Shabbat, they don't work on Saturday. And the Christians were the experts that were sent from France. They don't work on Sunday. So we come on Monday. We have to turn on the furnace. It takes a lot of time until the sand melt. So it takes a day. And then we start to work on Tuesday. We work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We stop. In 3 days, you cannot have a factory, profitable factory. So this is the situation. Sometimes we deal with it. Nowadays, factories in Israel that make glass, there are 2 big ones. They are called Phoenicians. They keep the name of the Phoenicians, the people who were here on the coast and made the glass. They work, the furnaces don't stop. It works on glass. They work with gas now, and they don't stop them. Only one day a year, this is Yom Kippur. They stop working. Every factory, you know, they stop it. And but this is how it is. You have any questions? Yes.
The lamp we see there, is that made here or not?
No, it's an artist work. It's not modern.
Okay.
It's not a part of the history. It's modern, very modern.
Okay.
Very nice one. Yeah. Now I want to show you, if you want to bring your chairs, bring them here. If not, we'll stand here for a second. We know that at least 4,000 years ago, people start to use glass for glazing, mainly for glazing, like beads, bricks, nice vessels, but they didn't make the artifacts from glass. Okay? Only 3,500 years ago, they started to make small bottles. Now I'll show you here, later on, pay attention to it. Here you have rings made of glass, stamps made of glass, amulets, you say gems or gems? To put in the gems, buttons, stoppers, a lot of beads made of glass. Why they like it so much? Because it's cheap, first of all. It's very cheap material. It's everywhere, you have sand. And you can add minerals, and you can get stones like turquoise or like lapis lazuli. מה? בחול. So this is what they made. They made copies from, like if you saw a scarab made from stone, they started to make scarabs. They cast it to mold. They started to cast them to molds, and this way they could make a lot of copies, very cheap copies. This is like today we use plastic, more or less. Now, they liked glass very much when they started to make the vessels. Why? Because in Hebrew we say glass, we say zchuchit. Zchuchit. It's from the root zach. Zach means in Hebrew naki. The material is very clean. If you put wine in glass bottle, not in plastic, you keep the quality of the wine, okay? Or perfume. You don't put good perfume in plastic. Or you don't drink good cola in cans. I don't drink, so this is what beer, I would say beer. You don't drink good beer in cans. This is why they started to make glass, but they didn't know how to blow in the beginning. They used to take a wood stick, put mud and straw, make the inside of the bottle, dip it in the glass, in the molten glass, get very nice color, and then start to decorate it with strings of glass. So they could get blue bottles with like gold decoration. Okay, this is what they made. For us archaeologists, if you find a small piece of this glass, it's better than finding a coin. Why? Because you can see the trace of the mud inside. It's not smooth and nice like the outside. And it was made only for a short time. So it's like a coin for very early period. Sometimes people say, how do you know how to date it? Today we know, we take it to laboratories, check the carbon dioxide or things like this, or the carbon 14, and we know. But sometimes these small pieces, small shards help us, small fragments help us to date. Only 2,000 years ago, they started to blow glass, to make bottles, to make bowls, to make small juglets, or candles, and they could make it very, very easily. Blowing makes it easy and cheap. We think that the first massive work of blowing glass started in Jerusalem. When we dug in the end of the 60s, the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem, just opposite the temple site, this was the rich area of Jerusalem. Today it's the old city, okay? So we found the houses of the first millennium AD, the first houses before the temple in Jerusalem was destructed in 70 AD by the Romans. And we see that in those houses we find a lot of glass blown, and the instruments that they used to blow the glass. And this was the first appearance of blown glass that we know today. So this is what you see, all that you see here in this museum are from here. If I say that the first ones were in Jerusalem, I just wanted to know why they used it, because glass, as I said, it's a very clean and clear material. And for Jews who keep the very strict laws of the Bible, it's very important because you don't have to change between milk and meat, the plate. You can eat because it doesn't absorb the food. Oh, wow. Okay? This is why they needed it so much in Jerusalem. And later on, it spread all over the world. They started to blow. Today, even today, the machines in the factories, every second, the machine blow the bottle, okay? But the same technique, just blown. Here, it's a free blown. Today, we use more and more blown to a mold to get 75 centiliters or whatever we need, the same shape that we want. Okay, this is how it goes. Now, this you can see in many, many museums. But this mosaic floor that we have here is very unique to us. Why? It's the earliest in Israel. It's the end of the 2nd century BC, the Hellenistic period. We find it on the Tel, destroyed, broken, thrown to a pit, very close to the beach, so it was covered with a very thick layer of stony material. It took us a lot of time to restore these pieces. So it's the oldest in Israel. The stones are the tiniest that you will see ever. So we say that the resolution, you say the pixels. A lot of pixels here. This is how you check the quality, how small the stones are, and also the variety of colors. If you want to say that this mosaic is very high quality, it's the size of the stones and how many colors they use. So they use here a lot of glass in order to get the greenish colors and the bluish and the gray, and all the rest are the stones, okay? Now, a lot of people say, oh, this is a very nice woman. This is not a woman, this is a man. A little feminine in a way. The lips are red. He's dreaming, he's like, very sophisticated face. We think it's a theater mask. Why? Those of you who sit and see it, why do we think that it's a theater mask? Theater mask?
Because the mouth is open?
Yes, the mouth is open and hollow. It's black. The artist was so accurate that he could show teeth if it was a real face. But he wanted to show us that it's a theater mask. Why it is important? Because we know that the big floors in ancient Rome, even later, when they depicted the god Dionysus, the wine god, they always decorated the frame with the theater mask. It was the theater was part of the cult, the wine festivals, and I think they used to celebrate it. Okay? In theater, yes. So I must tell you that it's very interesting because we have a lot of fruits and flowers here. The fruits of the end of the summer, the time of the harvest. I know that some fruits are not so, we don't understand them, like this one here in the center. If you have any idea what it is, look at it and later on tell me the secret, what you think is the fruit here. Be careful when you walk into this room. I want to explain you something, and don't touch anything.
Before we go on the glass, what are the characteristic differences between the Phoenician and the Roman glass?
Okay. Phoenician glass is the old one that you see. Those before blowing. Blowing was later on in the Roman times. You know what? I'll tell you something about the Phoenician glass. Why we always say Phoenician. The Romans had the legend that those who found the glass were the Phoenicians. The story says that there were sailors in a very stormy day. They landed on the coast of Akko, okay? And they were wet and very cold, and they wanted to boil a soup. So they didn't find stones on the beach. They took from their boat sacks full of lime and made a fire, a round fire, They brought wood that they found on the beach, put the cooking pot, and they fell asleep. And when they woke up in the morning, the area around the fire was glass. And this is how they revealed the glass. Now, this is a Roman tale. We know that people find that mankind knew the secret of making glass much earlier than the Phoenicians. When we're talking about the Phoenicians, we're talking about those who continued, the Canaanites. This is the same people who lived here. These are the natives of this country that lived here through ages, and they control later on only along the coast of Lebanon and the north coast of Israel. And they were sailors, and because of the knowledge, the marine knowledge, navigation, they little by little controlled the whole Mediterranean and had settlements everywhere. And they were not only good trade, they not only controlled the trade, they knew how to make glass, but later on we'll talk about the colors, which was their secret, okay, how to make color. Okay, it's only about 4, 5, 6 months that we have each exhibition. Now we called it Glass in Spirit, not because of the liqueurs and the alcoholic spirits, but because of the spirit of the artist. Before, few decades before, glass was part of daily use. Artists used to make glass for functional use, okay, for bottles, for kitchenware, and even the artists in the Hellenistic time that used glass for using it, putting it in the mosaic floors, he didn't put something from his spirit, from his imagination, from his inner world. The mosaic floors were made, you know, the artist bought a book full of designs, and the one who wanted to have a mosaic floor in his house used to choose from this design book. So nothing came from his inner world. All was what we say stands, like from the same stem. Only a few decades ago, artists started to use a lot of glass, taking advantage of the fact that it's very cheap glass, that it can be colorful, that it can be transparent, that it can be used in many methods. Okay, they can use many, many techniques for making glass. So here it's a good demonstration because we have 5 works of students who finished their studies in the Academy of Glass in Bezalel in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. So every year when they finish their studies, they have a nice exhibition in Jerusalem for 10 days, and then we come to choose the artist we want, and they show it here. So I want to show you that now it's their inner world. Well, I give you an example. I don't usually understand explain artworks, but you can see here a work. She took the idea of those thorns that you see in the desert, rolling thorns that you see in the wind. She lives there in the south part of Israel, but you see it also on the coast. When these plants come to the mature stage, they are apart from the roots, and they start to roll in the wind, because this is the way they spread their seeds. Okay? Usually they are very, very brown, you know, very rough. Right. She took it to the other side. It's transparent, it's very delicate, very breakable. I always say, don't make foo. because we lose them. So now this is her inner struggle. This is her inner thoughts and imagination, and this is what she made. Olga is another student who used nature. She made about 600 masks of herself, and she used the ephemeral Ptera, a family of insects that live in the water, okay? They live usually in sweet water in the rivers, you see them. And once in 2 years, something like this, for very few hours, they become flies. And in the wave of, it takes seconds, they leave the rough cover, or how would they say, and become very nice insects. Yes, they have like a dance. You see them dancing in the river. So yes, so she took this image and want to show her process of getting again mature, taking all the masks and all the shields, and it's interesting. So you can see other works. I don't want to talk too much about them. Later on you can go and read. Please, let's go to the other room because we have a lot of... Okay, when we started to work here in 1980, we knew that many divers and fishermen find the archaeology in the sea, especially here, because as I said, it's like a cemetery of wrecks. And we know especially that they found cannons and ammunition and gunpowder. We didn't know the story, which war was here. And then we found this, in 1981, this cannon with the Turkish emblems. And 2 years later, we still didn't understand, we couldn't date the war that was here. And then we found the other one, the short one, the mortar, and there is an inscription, and there isn't a year. And we understood that it's from 1780s somewhere, and that the bronze was brought from Peru to Sevilla in Spain, where it was casted. And later on, we knew that there was a war in Spain between the French army and Spain, and somebody took the cannon from Spain. And we started to look in the archives, and we found out that here we have some finds from the journey of Napoleon to this country. I don't want to make it too long, but you have to understand that in 1798, Napoleon, who was a very, very young general in the French army, after the revolution, he decided to conquer Egypt. Why? We have to understand his character and know that he wanted to be like Alexander the Great, who conquered the whole East. So he said, let's start with Egypt. His journey was very, very planned. 400 ships, 1,500 soldiers, a lot of soldiers. No, what I say? 13,500 soldiers, a lot. It was well, the equipment was very, organized with cartographs, archaeologists. They found a Rosetta Stone in Egypt. They cleaned the Sphinx and tried to understand it, the pyramids. They made a lot of work, botanical documents, diaries. Everything was documented. Also, with Napoleon, with his army, moved from one place with painters. They used to paint the battles. So, when he was very busy in Egypt, his boats in New Alexandria were exposed to the British Navy. Admiral Nelson was just after him, and he burned all the boats. Napoleon didn't have any chance to go back to France with all this army after finishing the job in Egypt. So he said, why not to conquer Palestine? Again, under Turkish rule in those days. And this is what he did. He started to move the army, most of his army, along North Sinai. You see the map in your imagination? Mm-hmm. Trying to conquer El Arish, Gaza. He didn't succeed so well. They had to stop there for a long time, and this is where his army became sick. They got the plague. And they continued. They arrived they didn't want to conquer Jerusalem. Jerusalem was not in their way. Akko was the main site, the city that they wanted to conquer. Okay, so they came to Jaffa, and in Jaffa, Napoleon and his officers asked the Jaffa army to give up, and they didn't want to. So he sent. He didn't want. The ruler of Jaffa didn't want. He wasn't afraid. He had walls and he had cannons. He wasn't afraid. So Napoleon sent one of his commanders to give him a treaty agreement, and they killed him. The people of Jaffa killed him and hung him on the walls. So the French army were mad about them, and they conquered the city, and they killed. There is a terrible description. All this journey have terrible descriptions about what happened in the way. And Napoleon and the French army took 50 cannons. This is one of them. This is why they have the Turkish emblems. Okay? And they continue to the north. They were sure that they are going to conquer Akko very easily. They didn't realize, first of all, that there are 2 city walls, and that the British Navy supported the people of Akko. And after a long siege, Napoleon understood that with his sick army, he cannot conquer this country, and he gave an order in May 1799 to start to withdraw back to Egypt. One of the nights, between the 21st and the 22nd, this is according to one of the commanders of this journey, they arrived to our bay, again to the bay that you will see later on, and Napoleon understood that he has to give up all the cannons that they were carrying and everything, and throw it to the sea, because they needed the wheels, the chariots. I don't know how to say it. Carrots. And this is what they did in that night. Between the 21st and the 22nd, everything was thrown to the beach, to the sea, between the islands. And what they didn't succeed to put in the sea, they buried 2 huge cannons, 3 meters long, was buried here in the sand. And they put all the ammunition and the explosives in boxes on the sand. Somebody was stupid enough to set a fire, and it exploded, and it's terrible. If you read it, it's a nightmare. Okay, this is what happened here, and this is what we found 200 years later. About all this journey, usually you don't read about it in the history.
History books.
In the history books, because later on he came back to Egypt with almost no army left. He left the army there for 2 more years. He hitchhiked the first boat that he could find, went back to France and became a big hero. But this is I said that there were no journalists and newspapers and media like today to judge him for this trip. we had a volunteer here when we started. He was a Swiss guy, and he made this model of a boat of the time of Napoleon. And you can see that, you can see the cannons, you can see all the details. Everything was made by him, even the ropes, everything. It's amazing. Okay, those of you who need a seat, I just want you to know that in the beginning of the 50s, the first excavation was made, but not on the tell, just on the slope of the tell. Why? Because the kibbutz, Nachsholim kibbutz, this is a kibbutz where we are located, was built in 1949. Okay? So, when they started to build the foundation of the houses, they found this column. It's a marble column, and it made a big sensation. Why? It's written here in ancient Greek, a stone from the holy Golgotha. So everyone was, this is not a stone from the Golgotha, this is marble. And the Golgotha in Jerusalem is lime. So this is not a stone from the Golgotha. But what we know is that sometimes they used to, before the Holy Sepulchre was built, this is how you say it, Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem was built on the Golgotha, the place of crucifixion. People used to take chips of stone as a relic and brought them, if they were pilgrim, they used to bring them to their homeland, to their village, to the church. Something very holy. The holiest thing from Israel was brought. Later on, they built a huge basilica on top of it to stop it. Nowadays, you cannot reach and take samples from the stones. But what they did, because this is one of the earliest churches in Israel, here on the coast, what they did to make this place holy, they bought this small stone from the Golgotha, put it here in this hole, covered it with probably a golden cross, and suddenly this place became holy. Why they had to do it? Jesus was not here, not his apostles. No miracle happened here. Why they needed to build here a church and make it holy? Because you have to understand that around 350, when Christianity became the legal religion of the Roman Empire, pilgrims started to come to find again the holy places. So these pilgrims, coming in small boats, had every 25, 30 kilometers to stop. Why? They needed water, they needed to eat, and also to make a spiritual process while reaching little by little to the holy places in Jerusalem and around the Lake of Galilee. And this is why they had, let's say in Atlit they had a stop, here they had a stop, in Caesarea they stopped. So every few kilometers they had to attract these pilgrims. This is why they bought so early this stone and made the basilica very, very important. In some periods, according to Christian scripts, there was a bishop here. So it was a big cathedral. And the bishop had this scepter made of ivory that they found in the beginning of the 50s in this church. You can see the gesture of the hand. You can see the ring that he had, very holy ring. And it became a very, very important place that they could come, look for start the process. They had here They had a lot of water reservoir, which was very important for all these pilgrims to have fresh water from this cistern that was in the courtyard. There was also a very, very important tomb. Now, the people who dug it in the 90s, they came from the French Christian Institute. They dug this tomb, which was in the corner of the basilica here. They found two skeletons, two probably holy persons who were buried in the basilica. And you could see, this is what she explained to me, that this hole, there was under the tomb, there was a plastered basin. So they used to pour oil through this hole, through the remains, the bones of the holy people that were buried here, and they used to take them in small ampoulas back to their homes. Okay? Like today, you know, some people take water from the Jordan River or take holy air from Israel. So it's very important. It's very medical, I would say. If you believe, it works. Yes, yes, yes. It's only a matter of belief. So this is our church. You have to know that we have also on the tail there was Crusader Fortress. So the Crusaders, especially in the 13th century, they built a lot of castles along the coast to control the French, the Christian kingdom, which was in a very big threat from the Muslims. Okay, and this is the remain of the castle. Let's go on. You can see this room with a lot of finds from land archaeology, from the mound, digging the mound. You can see an aerial photo of the mound. This is after a good winter rain because it's green. Today it's dry and yellow. We have no rain this year. You see the fish ponds where the swamps were. And the museum is somewhere in the window. And when in summertime, the opposite room is our workshop. It's the restoration room, it's the office, it's the headquarters of the dig. And everything that we find is both. Now that it's a museum, we build a tent here, and all the work is done outside. But the computer, now today we did with computers too, so everything is there. Now we have also an exhibition of a young artist that her work is spread on the table. You can look at it later. What you can see in this room, we called it Dor, ruler of the seas. This is how it is in some of the coins in the early Roman period. This is how Dor, the city of Dor, is called. I didn't tell you, the Dor is mentioned also in the Bible. It started as a Canaanite city, but later on in the Bible we read that Joshua conquered it. So maybe he conquered it, but probably the tribes of Israel never settled in this time, in the time of Joshua and the judges. Only later on we read again that Solomon, King Solomon, controlled the harbor here, and it was so important that he put his son-in-law to control one of the members of the, it happened today in the States too, that you put one of the members of the family to control things. So it happened in Solomon time too. He put his son-in-law to control the harbor. And, but in most of the times, it was a Phoenician time. And even in around 1100 and 1100 BC, we have a document, a papyrus from Egypt. Now it's exhibited, it is kept in Russia, that one of the sea peoples the Sikil tribe, controlled the coast. This is a tribe that is parallel to the Philistines that are so well mentioned in the Bible. They were the mythological enemy of the Israeli tribes. Okay? So on the coast there was another tribe of these sea people for a short time. It's very interesting. We want to find out the evidence of those periods. So now we are concentrated in our dig in those, in so early in the 12th and 11th and 10th century BC, time of from Joshua on to the kingdoms of Israel. What you can see here are amphoras that show us that in the Persian period, in the 5th, 4th century, and later on to the Roman period, there was a big trade between all the islands and places that produce wine in the Mediterranean. People were so rich here that they could afford themselves to bring wine from all over. So you can read later on these labels that show us that this comes from Rhodos, this comes from Athens, this coast, Samos, everywhere in the Mediterranean. Okay? How do we know? There are stamps, and they are very typical shapes, because not all the people knew how to read and write. Most of them did not. So by going to the store and looking at the shape of the amphora, they could say, I want wine from Rhodes. Later on, they started in the Roman period, they started to imitate the shapes. But in the beginning, they were, in the first 500 years, they were very, very strict to the stamp on the handle of the amphoras. So you can see the connection between this city to the Mediterranean. Okay, you can see like this mask shape. This is a Medusa figure. Medusa was one of the marine demons. There were 3 gorgonas, they are called in the Greek mythology. They were in the sea, and people that looked at their eyes became stone. And they were immortal. Nobody could fight them. Only Medusa was the mortal. So Perseus, one of the heroes of the Greek mythology, got a very sharp sword and what is a round shield. Is that how you say shield? Mm-hmm. And the shield was so burnished that it became like a mirror. So it was smart enough to show it to her face. She looked at herself and became stone, and so he could win this battle, cut her head, and she became the protector of Athena, the goddess Athena, and Athens. So you find her in on the roofs of the temples. Even today, if you go to Athens, to the old part of the city, look at the roofs and you'll see small gorgonas around in the edge of the roofs of the tiles. Okay? Or in Sicily. Even today, they believe that it will protect their houses. So they make small Medusa shapes like this, and they put it in the entrance to the house. Also, you can see the figurines. Every house, from the Canaanite period on, every house has a figurine, especially fertility figurine. Why? Because people, women, especially women, what they want babies. So they believe it will help them to have a lot of babies. We find it in the Bible. In the Bible, it's written about Rachel, when she escaped from her father's house, what she took with her? These are the figurines she took. She hid them in the camel. She didn't want to, even when they looked for it, because it was very important for the house. You don't give up so much the goddess of the house. Okay? You have their necklaces. All the gods of Egypt are there. We find them here because it was Phoenician town, because it was so international. They used even the amulets of the Egyptian mythology. Like I like to point to the pregnant crocodile that protected the pregnant women. And there is a small god, Beth. He was the one to protect the babies, the just born babies. It was very dangerous to be a woman in those days, babies too. So they needed protection. And these are the amulets that protect them. And there is the evil eye, against the evil eye. Even today, you see it in the market of Jaffa, of Jerusalem, everywhere, in Akko. You will see the small eyes that protect us from the evil eye. Okay? Look at the lamps over there. They're also from Turkey, from Greece, from Jerash in Transjordan, from Rome. You have lamps from all over the world. Okay? Here in this, in the houses of this city. Yes.
So everything here is from this area, right? All the
From this
artifacts and
mound,
things?
from this mound. All the things from the museum that you see are from here.
Okay.
Now I can go on showing you a lot of things, but let's go to the last room where I will tell you some words to summarize. As I said, we are digging the very early buildings of the 12th, 11th, 10th century BC. You have here a collection, an assemblage of what we found in this house that you see here. Just if you can step aside. In the corner, there is a huge jar. We found a room full of them. We stored only one. They were full of lentils and chickpeas. How can we put this? So, 3,100 years ago. How could we find such early things? The house was burnt in a fire, in a big fire. Probably one of the wars that was there in that time, and everything became ashy, and we could find them and send them to the laboratories, and they give us very good dates. Why? It's better to find something that is seasonal, like seeds, than to find the wood made from olive tree that can live for 500 years. It will not give you a good date as something that is seasonal. One room was full with fish bones. One room was full with jars from Egypt. So again, there was trade between Egypt and this country. And the most amazing thing that was found, this jugs like this, a round one, we call them pilgrim flasks that are also mentioned in the Bible, like David was sleeping on the flask, and aliens have a miracle with the flask. So these flasks were full. We found the sediments in the inside, and they showed that they contain red wine and cinnamon. Now, cinnamon so early, it was brought from Far East, from South India, from Sri Lanka, from maybe even farther. So there was a trade with the Far East those days, before Solomon days. Okay? Now you have to sit in there. Now, one of the secrets of the Phoenicians, of those people who lived along the coast, was how to make the purple color. In Hebrew, we even say that it's so rare. It was so rare because the purple color never faded, and even if you dig 2,500 years later, an installation where they produce the color, you find the color. It's so steady. This is why it was so demanded. The Assyrian kings made their voyages to the east to the west for them, the Assyrians from Mesopotamia, to look for threads and clothes colored in purple. And we know that because it was so rare, as the Greek stories and the Roman historians say, you need 15,000 shells to make one robe.
Wow.
Now, what kind of shells? We believe that they made them from these murex shells. There are three types. This is the most common one. Today they are very rare in our side of the Mediterranean. Why? Because the water are warm and polluted, and people use them too much. So they are rare now. They are very protected. You are not allowed to take a shell from the water. Now, what is important with this murex shell? That they have a gland, and the gland contains all the materials that protect the animal from enemies. You see what happened? You see what happened here? When they feel danger, they spread the color in the water like ink fish. This is to protect them. And you see the color. This is the purple color. So the Phoenicians had the secret how to use the gland and to color the clothes. And the name Phoenician comes from Phoenix, the color, the purple color. Yeah. And in Hebrew we have a special expression when we want to say that he is very special. We say he is Yechid Zgula. He is the only purple color, like if I don't say it. And we never understood what the expression. It's an old expression until we understand that this is so unique. You are unique like a purple color. Now, when we started to dig, it wasn't our main target, but we found many, many shells, and some of them have a hole on them. So we sent them to the Haifa University, to the botanical laboratories, and they say if you have so many, it means you have to understand that somebody kept them in captivity, and they didn't get good conditions in a certain time, and they started to eat each other. Okay? They are cannibals. They eat each other if they feel stressed. Okay? So it means that in some periods they were kept in captivity, not in a small aquarium, but in pools. And this is what we found around the tail. We have a lot of installation cut in the rock. And they have also trenches to the sea, because they knew that they have to supply them with fresh water. Otherwise they will eat each other and they will not have this gland to use for coloring the clothes. Okay, we found also actual installation full with powder with this color, and a lot of crushed murex that they used for the foundation of the houses and the roads and just to use the lime of the shell. Okay. Now we send all the materials to a laboratory in one of the towns near Tel Aviv. In Ramat Gan there is an academy for textiles, and they are not only doing very modern styling of clothes, but also they have laboratories that make research on all textiles. Okay? So we send all the materials that we found to them, and many other digs started to send them samples. And there was a professor there who tried to understand how to produce the color. And he came to the process. He knew to demonstrate the process that they used. It's very complicated, and you have to be very accurate about the temperature, about oxidized and other things. And but was not his main target, to understand how the Phoenicians made purple. He wanted to know how the Phoenicians made blue, the biblical blue, for the Jewish people. Okay, so after many years of experiments, one day he gave up. He said, I know how they made purple, but I don't know how they made blue. He put everything on the window. We went to make coffee and to tell his colleagues that he wrote articles about purple, but we'll never know how they made blue. And when he came back to the laboratory, all the window was blue. It's like a miracle, like hocus pocus, we say. What happened? The sun. You have to expose the sun in one of the steps, and the purple turns to blue. This was the secret of the Phoenicians, okay? Now, why for Jews it's very important? Because it's written in the Bible. No, it's not only written in the Bible, there is a description of the temple in Jerusalem, and the curtains were blue. We say in Hebrew, tchelet, it's light blue. And we know that the priests used to wear blue colors. Like in other cultures, the priests and the kings used to wear purple. Okay? The Jews used to paint it in blue. And especially when it's written in the Bible, one of the commandments say that you should place upon the tzitzit, okay, the threads, of each corner thread of tchelet, tchelet is the blue, and you shall see it and remember all the commandments of God, and you shall do them. Jews have in the Bible 613 commandments. A Jew in those days had to fulfill them all. So he had to have one thread of, maybe you see the Orthodox Jews, they have threads coming out from their clothes, you saw it? Mm-hmm. Pay attention to it. Most of them are white now. But one of them, according to the commandment, should be blue. It's very strange. Why blue? And what is blue? You know, when the people of Israel were exiled and were far away from the coast and spread all over the world, they forgot a lot of the commandments. They don't have to fulfill a lot of the commandments like in old days, because there is no temple, no priest, nothing. So about 2/3 of all the commandments are not accomplished today. One of them is this blue. But always, rabbis wrote about what is the blue? What did they make the blue for? And there was a big secret about that because the Phoenicians kept it as a secret. They never wrote about it. So this rabbi found the real thing, how they made the blue. And what is the blue? And this is what you see. This is the real blue. Now, the question is, why did they have to wear a thread made of blue? Now, there is a quotation from one of the rabbis which I like, and it's here. And he said, now that you go to the sea, you will see. Tchelet resembles the sea, blue resembles the sea, and sea resembles the sky, and the sky resembles God's holy throne. Why is it? After you saw that all the peoples around the Jews had many gods. They were pagans. They had God for fertility. They had God for women, pregnant women, for babies, for warriors, everything they had. The people of Israel have one God, which they don't see. They worship it with no real connection. And you have to imagine that the Jew had to imagine that his God is in the blue, in the endless blue. This is where the God's holy throne is. And this is why he had to be out from his garment, from his clothes. So you will remember that this is his God. This is the connection between God and those believers in the past. Okay? Now more and more people start to wear the real blue that is made in workshops. Sometimes they come to here, they dive. We show the people the place where they live, but we are not allowed to take them. And they don't use the shells from here, from Israel. They got the glands. Those who color now the tzitzit, those threads, they are not allowed to take the gland from the animals here, from the water. They buy them from Spain or from Croatia or from Morocco, where they eat the creatures from the shell, but they don't like the gland because it's very bitter and it's poisonous. So they take them out. So they know that there are some crazy Jews who are ready to pay a lot of money to get them. And this is why they color it in this process that you see. By the way, just for the last sentence, when the Zionist movement started 130 years ago, they thought about the flag that the land of Israel will have in the future. And they took this blue. This is why we have a blue and white flag. So this is why the blue is, and the stripes are part of the garment that every Jew, Orthodox Jew, have under his clothes. Okay? So you have to see that there is a meaning to everything. I think that's enough. You better go around.
Stay in your chair, though, but we certainly...